Freedman trained since childhood as a ceramicist. He worked in studios and industry on several continents to develop a repertoire of techniques which facilitate the expression of his diverse interests, ranging from formal pottery in the Steno tradition to conceptual sculpture, which he has exhibited in galleries and museums throughout the world since 1975. His earliest works were symmetric porcelain vessels, wheel thrown from a single piece of clay, using a dry throwing technique to facilitate large-scale, thin-walled forms. Subsequent elements of sculpture utilized rectilinear forms made through a process of model making and press molding, techniques borrowed from the Sung Dynasty tradition, which inspired much of his seminal form and glaze creation. Published author, Freedman's written word, imprinted upon and pierced through the walls of ceramic vessels, characterized mid-career works exposed in major galleries and solo museum exhibitions. Freedman's current sculptural works utilize an amalgamation of techniques and glazes derived from his personal development. And the vessel remains an element for construction in fabricated forms, deconstructing and reconstructing society's oldest metaphor for the body, the vessel, into personal modes of mind and experience. Stephen has been a strong advocate for the arts, having served for many years as the president of the board at East Hawaii Cultural Center, and has shown the works of numerous artists in his gallery in space. And we're proud to share that his piece here in our show, and there's a few pieces in the back, but this piece in particular has been recommended by the state's Art Acquisition Selection Committee to be acquired for the Art and Public Places collection. So, really exciting. So, without further ado, I will have Stephen come out. Give me some of this. Thank you. Mahalo, thank you.
Okay, so I don't know, I didn't really prepare today because I didn't know what kind of people will be here. I don't know if people are interested in technique or how many people work in porcelain. Again, so yeah. So we'll do a little bit. I was years, I don't know how many years ago, and Miho just said one day, I think you should come and do a throwing performance for us. I've done throwing demonstrations all over the place, but I've never heard it called performance. It was so charming, I just knew I had to do it. But I didn't bring my gold thong, so I'm just going to So I thought I'll just start from the rudimentary, which is wedging up the clay, and actually haven't opened this stuff for a couple of years. Characteristically, porcelain, who's an expert in porcelain here? Are there any?
That's a loaded question.
Jake and Mina came and they talked to me, invited me to the show. So I said, what do you mean by porcelain? They said, what do you mean by porcelain? So I said, well, my career professionally began after I moved to the forest in Australia, and an old prospector showed me a pit in the forest near where I live that was porcelain. It had been mined by a clay company, and just a hole in the ground, pool at the bottom, and I would dig the clay up from that, and it was pure porcelain. And it was really hard to throw. I mixed it with suet at the clay, and it worked for a lot of years. And subsequently went to I worked with a wood-fired kiln for my first 5 years there. Then I moved to America and lived in Los Angeles, where I worked in various factories learning different techniques. And we would occasionally work with white clays that are not porcelain, but they're porcelainous. So I'm going to say stuff, and if there's experts out there who know I'm wrong, just say it, and I accept that that's true. So as I understand it, porcelain is the oldest of clays. It's broken down to the finest particles. And so it's the particles comprising the body are so fine that they make for a very dense, close body that when fired is hard, and when it vitrifies, for those who aren't so insistent, turns to glass. It becomes extremely dense. The upside of it, it's incredibly beautiful to work with. It's soft, it's lovely. It has no real strength, it's very rubbery and moves easily. So most people think that porcelain is very hard to throw, but it's not really hard to throw if you have really good technique. It just has to be done a certain way, very quickly and very directly, and it can be made extremely tall, believe it or not. Mostly these days when people speak about tall porcelain, they do use, this is porcelaneous stoneware. It's a white clay. They add a little bit of stuff to it to make it stand up easier. But that's not necessarily the case. So I thought I'll do a little throwing and just show you some of the stuff I learned in various studios, factories, techniques that are unfortunately pretty close to lost in the studio product. I've been working with a friend of mine in the studio and we talk about it often. I think in America, perhaps when they practically the start of the 60s, and it kind of came over, as I understand it, via Bernard Leach, who brought it from Japan, folk craftsmen from the Ming Age, Japanese movement to England, and Bernard knew he wasn't a very good potter. He was just a painter that tried to be potter. And then this guy, he was the guy, the American, Warren Pence, who came over and he wanted to work with Bernard. Bernard said he wasn't good enough, and Bernard wasn't that good. And Warren kept begging, and finally Bernard let him apprentice for a little while. And he brought the craft movement to America. So I don't think he brought great technique with it, is all I'm saying. So technique in the studio pattern tended to deteriorate while design increased and improved. And technique in the studio in the factory got better and better. So factory technique in mass production is extraordinary. Design is questionable. Technique in the studio tends to be questionable, but design is strong. And so I really am enjoying showing and teaching people techniques which allow rapid quality work to be made, so that technique is then in addition to the production of work, particularly in a difficult medium like porcelain. Isn't that difficult? So we start with this block of clay here, which I haven't opened in several years, and it's rock hard. One of the key characteristics about porcelain, and stop me anytime you have questions, is that having low plasticity to start with. Sorry, the bag's stuck, I can't do this.
There you go.
It appears like it's unworkable. If you use porcelain like normal clays when it's soft, it'll get very soft. It'll become too pliable. So there's a technique used in factories in Italy that I learned. It's dry throwing. I don't know how many of you know how to throw it dry, but you can throw completely without water. It's a little slower, but I'll do partly that technique and partly the other techniques. And anybody who's interested in that, I've been teaching to dry throw, but the advantage with porcelain is as the clay gets wetter, it becomes more plastic and it collapses very quickly. So you either work fast or with very little water. And work with it hard like this, which seems unworkable, but theoretically, it's going to become workable.
Sorry. You guys want to come on
Yeah, I was going to say, if anybody over there wants to move over here, I'm happy to move too. So.
You can see, anybody who wants to touch it, we feel like it feels like a rock, and it's going to suddenly become very pliable in a minute. My idea is correct.
Sorry?
Very cool. Yeah, that's it. Anyway, there's a technique they use in the factories. Normally they use a bread kneading kind of technique for pottery, but in the dry throwing factories they do a technique called bouncing. So you cut the clay to the approximate shape you want, and you bounce it, make it round, and with earthenware particularly, which is similar to porcelain, you can throw it rock hard without adding the water. I'm going to start with that technique, so I just bounce it slightly. Do any of you know who Michael Frinkis was? Is? Shelby knows. Anyone else? He's a very famous potter who he throws paper thin. He learned this technique at this Italian earthenware factory, and he was very eccentric. And we would He would show me a pot that he'd been making, and there'd be a little hole in it, and he'd say, "That was the corner of the bag, it was too dry." It has like a memory that would come through the whole thing, and in the end, there it would be, and sure enough, and I started learning this technique. Michael is worth looking up online because he's an extraordinary man. He got multiple sclerosis back in the 70s, I think. And when I met him, he was in a wheelchair, and he worked himself to the point where he was running and exercising, and he's still working in his studio. He's doing quite well. But he showed me one of his pieces, and I picked it up, and I almost threw it because it was so light. And he showed me this technique, but he could barely move his body. So he described it to me, and it sounded like nonsense. He was talking about it. He took a lot of peyote. So in my vision, I saw this. The extrusion. He understood the arm as the axis. So you'll see when I start throwing, the axis is the center of the action here in the wheel, and that's why you bounce it to keep the clay axis where it belongs. So. Good job. I'll shut up now. Do what I do better.
It's doing good way. Yeah. All the stories.
So essentially, a dry throw would start with the clay now, but using techniques that, this is the Asian method of kneading the clay so you don't put any more moisture in it. You spiral it out into a circle. Sorry about the breathing, it goes in territory. We'll see in a minute. This technique lines up all particles. It looks like this. So you move the wheel around. You can do 50 pounds of clay at once using this technique, because you're using the body weight to roll on it. And it amalgamates the particles to lines them up. Well, back up. So now, clay feels completely different, so I'll do these forms, just getting ready, but anybody who wants to just take the feel on this, and I can see it's soft but quiet over there. I'll just get them all ready so that I don't have to do this again.
Yeah.
I should really ask Shelby to come with. Except he's got the nice shirt on.
So do you ever just do the bouncing without
Yes.
traditional edging? Okay.
Yeah, in this case, the clay's been sitting for years,
So you need to.
so it gets a skin.
Yeah.
And like Michael used to say, find the corner later on the tab. So I wedge it just to get the corners off.
Okay.
But the dry throwing technique, it's, in the old days, like when I dug the clay out of the pit, it comes out with rocks and air bubbles and things in it.
Yeah.
People, traditionally in pottery, there's a lot of mythology. Books on throwing, firing, clay, they're filled with stories like the potter tripped over on the way to the kiln and the firing came out well, so they decided they would have to trip over each time they did it. So that's how the knowledge about pottery has been carried down. There's a lot of misinformation. And when do various factories? It's true. The factories make the clay so well now. They have machines that mix it up. You take it out and start kneading it up, it gets worse. So yes, a lot of times, especially in the throwing factories, we'd go in there and we'd cut up the bag to the amount of balls that we did. Like there's 25. You cut the bag this way, you lay it next to your wheel, one up, put it on, and just start throwing. The interesting thing about factory techniques is that you have to be fast. And although I started throwing, my mother had a studio when I was 6. When I got to the factories, I realized that throwing in production situation is a completely different process. And despite the fact that I'd been throwing all my life and I thought I was good, I was the worst thrower in the factory because the techniques of a professional thrower are quite different from the techniques of a studio potter. And that was the beginning for me of learning. After few months in the factory, I went to various factories and studios just because I was interested in techniques. And that was the first time that I learned to throw porcelaneous clays. Because one of the reasons to use porcelaneous clays is they're white. And so they're a good canvas, and people who like to paint would hire me to throw pieces that they couldn't throw. And in those studios I learned to throw very tall, very skinny forms very quickly, which was another skill. But with the white clay, I began to realize this was doable. And of course, then after that, Michael Freedman came along, and that's when the dry throwing came into it. So this may be enough, but we'll start with these three. Yeah, it's really kind of beautiful. And you'll notice when I pull it together, I turn it this way out because our wheels turn this direction. About half of the wheels in Asia turn the other direction. And so the particles line up the wrong way if you put the clay the other way. And you can feel the difference. So interestingly, the difference in forms, and this is just my theory, but if you look at most European and Grecian pottery, it's very profile driven, very strong outside hand pushing. And the Chinese wear, like from the Song Dynasty, and some of the Japanese wear, because half the wheels turn the wrong way, are inflated from the inside. And I believe that comes because the wheel goes the other way. So while we have the left hand inside, they have the right hand inside their strong hand, and so that control and force comes from within, and the pieces feel different. Again, it's personal theory, completely made up. So when I teach left-handers to throw, they can throw much better than right-handers, quickly.
You teach your left-handers to throw like a righty. I'm left-handed, but I throw reversed.
Yeah, just people who are dominant left-handed. They get the idea of how to pull from the inside instead of push from the outside. You see a lot of young people who really want to throw big. They use strength and they push and push. And it's really an effective way to get clay to rise. Yeah. Oh, shut up. Here. Okay. So one of the techniques to do with the dry throwing is to put the clay in the middle by just slapping like this. You see it's very responsive now. And to explain the way force works in throwing, I made a little formula that I used to tell people, which is that your strength as a potter is a function of the force you apply divided by the surface area multiplied by the wheel speed. When I was just starting out, my mother had a friend who was a tiny little woman. She could throw big. But how does she do it? And she used these techniques. So you can imagine if you apply force here, you have a certain amount of strength. You apply it here, there's more force on smaller area. So using less surface area and more wheel speed, it goes faster and force is applied. So here's what it looks like. So I thought I'd just pull a cylinder, throw a ball, and then share some dry throwing techniques if you're interested. How about just this wheel up? So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to go in at the floor and pull my hand across and cut the corner. Most potters, this technique is tough, sorry. Most potters suffer from the wall of their vessel, which I'll show you when I finish this, being shaped like this. And the bigger they throw, the more of this happens. And I try to work with potters in LA and get production potters to help me. And give them 12 pounds of clay, you can throw this big, you give me 24, it's the same size, this gets thicker. Getting that bottom corner is the key to making it work. So right now I'm going to cut that bottom corner, my fingertip. Good point. This is all just setting up for the real pulling.
It's all right, Jeff. You won't do it, really. There's so much physics.
So essentially, to make porcelain work, you need to do it fast. So here's one of the most interesting problems that almost every potter I've taught has. If they say, I can't throw taller than 14 inches, which is, you're getting there, it's because of their chairs in the wrong place.
Oh.
They're sitting there. You see my elbow? If I put my chair
What do you think?
over here, now my Michael Trinkett's famous axis is straight. So you want the axis from the pendulum point, which is your elbow, to be here. So it's impossible sitting here to do anything unless it's really wide. So as you get taller, that axis has to get better. So basically we'll pull it twice more to finish the cylinder, and if I were gone I would shape it. But if I were to do 3 or 4 pulls, the clay would stand. So the factories are set up, and from this point you pull. So if that axis tilts, it's because I'm out of practice. And I'll stop here just for amusement.
I'm holding my breath. It's impressive.
This is where potters who learn to throw production are different from other potters. Most potters put their fingers opposite and pull the clay up like this and squeeze it up, which puts a lot of torque on it. Production throwers juxtapose their hands unevenly, and that makes the clay move through like an airplane wing and puts a lot less stress on it. You can leave it hanging there. Porcelain should fall down now, but at this point, because I told it not to. I don't embarrass myself. Okay, now I'm also a little bit taller than this, so I'm just going to have to stand up. Got you a little bit, just stir up the coloring. You try to embarrass myself yet. So I'll just do one more pull from the bottom, just to see what we can do. And that used to this wheel. Where can these go?
For something tall, do you ever use a stick or just use your arm?
When I get above 30 inches, my arm's 23 inches to my armpit, so 23 I can still do it. After that I use the stick. And I've been able to pull, that sounds unlikely, but about 44, then you need longer sticks. And it gets so awkward that it's easier to do with sections. So now, the pendulum point was my elbow. Now the pendulum point needs to be my shoulder. So if I'm not straight, and you'll probably see I haven't done this in a long time, so I probably will tilt. If I do, the clay will twist. And most people think their pulling technique is bad because of the pulling technique, but stuff in the arm isn't straight. So hopefully I'm capable of doing this. Carrying Phillips 220 with very forward. So that's basically it, yeah. Sure. And so the clay is still tough and strong, holding out, no difficulty. And with the same techniques, this is probably 18 inches. It can go up indefinitely. There's nothing about porcelain that's unique. It's halogenic. So what I'll do is I'll just cut this in half so you can see what I'm saying about the bottom quarter of clay. And then I'll shape this. It won't stand up very long, so look and then it's going to be gone. So if this is the bottom corner here. So you see that's pretty even from here to the top. It could be thinner, but that's basically what makes that kind of bird. Standing up, that's where it shows how thick it was. You can imagine if I thin this out a little bit more, the piece has enough clay to go about so tall, but I'm not feeling that much hubris.
We sit down there. You should stay here.
I'll just do a different shape now. So I thought, I'd show you guys just with all form it's using easier. Clay always wants to get wide.
Yeah.
So this is just to smooth it out. Normally this would be centered already, but to get porcelain nice, you just need to massage it just a little bit more because those particles from that dust edge aren't perfect. Feel it in my hands. It's much more agreeable to get them wide. The hardest forms to throw in porcelain and other clays are tall and narrow. But this kind of form is extremely easy. Okay. So there's nothing specifically difficult about throwing bowl form. It can get wider and wider and wider. But, so for the bowl form, usually you leave just a little bit here to trim the foot out of. So basically about getting a good bottom corner, smoothing it out. Interestingly, in the factories, the efficiency you learn is that if you dip your hands in the water twice while you're throwing the form, you lose like $10 that day. If you do it once, you make more money. So you learn efficiency, and with efficiency comes skill and quality. And the works get better and better and easier to make that way. I was going to do 4 of these, but it seems redundant or boring. So I could do one more if anybody's interested. Otherwise, what I did was I brought along a half-made cylinder and let that dry out a little bit for shaping, dry shaping, which is the technique that I wanted to show you. How's our time got, Kina?
It's 11:47. We have like about 15 more minutes.
Oh, okay, but I learned dry shaping.
Yeah.
Look like you're waiting, Shelby.
Yeah.
Dry shaping, or nobody needs to see another cylinder, right?
That's fine.
Is there dry throwing? Dry throwing?
Well, dry throwing begins with some of the techniques I've thrown. Dry shaping is part of dry throwing, and they can't be demonstrated together. You want me to show just some dry throwing, basically? Oh,
Only if people are, only if there's
Yeah. Dry throw or dry shade?
we're showing time.
Yeah, let's do the shade.
So I'll describe it. I'll pantomime first. So what I was doing is, on the heel of my hand here, after I pat the clay into the center, the heel of your hand develops a pad, and you bring the clay up on that. And then maybe I'll do it with a middle. Okay. The key to the whole thing, though, after I learned this technique from the crazed Michael Frinkis, was I used the technique for shaking. It's very efficient and excellent for shaking. And part of the reason I brought the piece along that I'm going to try and shape here was that, now we're not going to tell the story, so I definitely put it straight. When I definitely knew I wasn't an expert on porcelain, I had a friend from Korea who asked me to help her translate a book on Korean porcelain. She was translating, and so I got to go to the vault at the Hamlet Museum where they have the best collection of Korean porcelain outside of Korea, they say. And it was amazing and wonderful. And looking through all the work and learning about it and understanding how it all functioned was just kind of amazing. But in the book, there are a few things that just annoyed me. One was that they called it white porcelain, and porcelain is white, but not in their tradition. They have a thing there they call it brown porcelain, and they have green celadon, and they have brown celadon. And then our language, in English, celadon means green, but celadon is a formulation of glaze, and their celadons have a brown body come out, and they're oxidized, they come out brown. So I learned a lot of stuff, and one of the masters contended, we throw moon pots. You know about moon pots? Moon pots are 2 balls that are just stuck together in the middle and made into a bigger sphere. He said, because we can't throw a sphere or porcelain. So now I'm showing off. So now I've thrown spheres of porcelain for a long time using the dry throwing tool. And seriously, this isn't art. This is technique. And I'd love to say I'm wonderful because I can do this. I'm lucky because I got to learn these techniques when other people didn't. I'd love to teach it to people because for me, technique is how you do what you do, and art is whether you do anything interesting with it. And having good technique should be foundational for me in education. I would just love to see people knowing what they're doing before they start making art, so they have some freedom, there's some technique, there's the foundation, instead of creativity being so important to everybody like cultural art. Can I be obscene here?
Sure.
When I started teaching first time in Australia, these people were all just trying to make original things. They were so awesome. And I said I would rather see a copy of a really good piece than an original piece of shit. It was just so pleasurable to see people making things that are based in the decisions of people who are responding to their environment, maybe vessels that make sense within their tradition, not making their own rules, following rules that actually have been modified and subtly evolved, and then an expression to make come out of it. But usually a lot of technique comes into play at that point, and that's something I appreciate. So after insulting, Go try. And we just, unfortunately, I brought a bat that's with a piece that's supposed to lock on here. We had a equipment failure, so I'm just going to throw a pad and try to do it with this. And this could fail horribly, as anybody who's tried to do this knows.
That's it.
So I'm just putting some clay down here to try and stick my piece to in the hubs that it'll.
Almost.
Some now work. So
That's already.
potentially extremely embarrassing. So I threw this cylinder last night. I was supposed to hop this on the wheel and be centered, but it's not going to be because of this issue, so we'll see it.
Big ones. There's the cut.
The last thing I throw today before trying to see if this still works is you notice when I'm trying to get something centered, I look away. But most potters, they see with their fingers. Not good to see with your fingers, you can't see with your eyes. If you look at the thing, you get all these lies called by Hegels and stuff, so look away is the way to go. So the principle of throwing dry, of shaping dry, throwing dry is to use a small surface area and not create a lot of friction. So the dry throws that I learned from use metal ribs made out of spring steel to get minimal surface area onto the thing. And I'm going to use close to the cutting edge of this thing, it's bouncy, to replace my fingers so I get less drag. And I'm going to use this to do the same techniques I was doing then, assuming this is in the middle and assuming it doesn't fly off into your lap.
Well, you get to keep it. It's
So I'm just going to say
ready to catch it.
so it's almost centered, which may or may not be good enough. It's not very centered at all. I'm just going to push it down once more. Nope, it's still flying around. If all this is going nicely, I would pop this straight out. It's a nice bubble engine. I'm really impressed. This may not be what I'm about to have.
Here goes.
Spider.
Sorry. Equipment malfunction. I'm just sliding around. Any genius ideas, Jake? Sheldon? No.
I don't know why. Yeah, it should restart the analog.
Oh,
No cheat.
Add foil on the outside.
Yeah, you got chainsaw.
it's not a bad idea. Jake.
Should be. This.
If this doesn't work, I'll just have at it and I'll let it fly. Could be much trouble.
Well, you know, two-sided of that. It is everything. Then I add the. It is this.
Okay, alright, says it's not on second primary, let's go with it.
This.
Like that.
This is good.
as clay is normally losing its strength, now it's getting harder and drier and gaining strength. Are we waltzing yet?
Oh, yeah.
I don't need to. No, she went, let's play Tchaikovsky with us. It's very elegant. No desire.
Yeah, it's good to where you're from. Yeah.
Okay, on top then.
That.
So let's feel it, and feel the dance here.
It's chariots and the future.
Go inside, outside.
Like,
I can go down as split as egg in this muscle. I want this weekend.
Anh coi em sẽ về với bác
Same.
the third place and like what truth that was it.
People always talk, they chocolate and trim it off later. No, absolutely not necessary.
Let's still is.
And if it were centered adequately, I could make this a full sphere. If I had enough time, I could probably do it anyway, but I don't think anybody wants to watch paint dry.
Yeah. We're here for it.
There are glaciers that are coming faster.
yeah.
So it's
I'm not sure.
it's like every time.
So you got this.
I mean, it goes a little further and then I'm going to stop. Because this isn't boding well.
Thank you for this.
But yeah, you can see what's possible here.
Tension you do with. It's done, yeah. They used to go.
So now it becomes very responsive. And this technique is just amazing because normally when a potter pulls up a cylinder this tall, they get a pot this tall, they make a sphere. This way, whatever height I can pull my cylinder, I can make a full sphere that size. And it's totally different. And really sad that I've done workshops at colleges from UCLA to Manoa and a bunch of other places, and I haven't really seen more than a couple of people who can actually throw well. And you'd think that people who come out of programs should, but doctors should come out and be to like us.
Yes.
Cuts.
Like the coach.
Just my personal bias.
I was this 2 hours left. They, because professors just about my just goes shaking. So
This piece of clay is unhappy with these moving edges. Like I said, I'm just going to do a little bit and then cut it open so you can see what it looks like. And don't feel sorry for the bodies that'll be resurrected later.
A question about the spear now that's inside. Are you using this inside? If you select where your king is, oh, I see you have that.
This day.
Up.
And this is what I was talking about too. The key to what I consider to be the kinds of forms that emerged in the Song Dynasty is the inside hand is the exposed neck. So the inside hand is think of a clay wall. If you squeeze it, now it's thin here and it's thick here. You're pushing it up. If you go in, imagine with a big imagination, there's the wheel head, here's the clay, then the base of the piece, and the wall is going up. So you're pushing at the wheel head with this hand, hold the tool, and then going at the floor, so that this one just above. Now you create that airplane-like wing dynamic, and you create that motion, and then the inside hand does all the lifting, the outside hand just follows the guide. So the inside hand is doing all the work. And I'll go down to the bottom of this and do a little pull from the bottom to show you what it looks like. I could let go with my right hand if my thing is perfectly centered. I wouldn't need a guide. And I'll just go up and shake the bottom with the left hand. And that's what creates the beautiful sliding forms. The profile ones are built from the outside larger. It takes a little practice. And just for anybody who's interested in learning these kinds of techniques with the throwing, the way I've been teaching people recently, it's very rare that somebody gets to repeat a technique often enough to learn it, because you have to do thousands, hundreds of these. And so what I did was I started teaching somebody and I said, let's do this thing. It's the same stuff, same techniques. And within about 15, 20 minutes, you've done 30 or 40 repetitions and you got it. and move up, move up, move up, move up. Each size has slightly different technique and skill level, but it works the same all the way up. Repetitions can work that way. But yeah, I imagine, I know Sheldon, Steve knows this technique, right?
It's interesting as you were talking about this because I actually use a combo though, depending on which play body I'm using.
Right.
Right. So I start with one, and then I'm working more like this to finish.
But I can see a pulling technique is overhand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm also left-handed. But
Yeah. Pardon?
I throw the other way.
Oh, we're going to
We feel like the.
interesting. You are a lefty? But this left hand is super good.
I started out. I learned right-handed. So my undergrad, my first 2 semesters were in.
Huh.
I learned right-handed, and then I sat down at an electric wheel one day. It was going the wrong way, and I didn't know it. And I instinctually flipped my hands, and I could make things so much faster and more efficiently.
I taught, first college I taught at, there was a woman, they brought it to me, and they brought me in like it was a hired gun because they didn't have a graduate degree, so could we teach? So they hired me on the weekends to teach them, and this woman was getting her BA in ceramics, and she was this lovely woman, really good technique, and they said, she just can't throw above this thing, and if anybody can help her, I can. So I look at her, and I look, and I look, it's like, oh my God, she's on the wrong side of the clay. The clay's coming, rushing into her hands, she tears it off. I said, how about doing this? And I put her hands on the other side, she was a great drawer. Teacher watched that for 4 years. Yeah, I did one more color and then call it a day. So here's the overhang. Inside hand is doing that bump. That's that metal disc doing that bump. Outside hand is just guiding. No friction because I'm using the metal.
And it beats.
True.
You think it's it?
So I really would finish this if it were on center, but since it's not, I'll cut it in half. Is this the right timing for a finale?
Yeah, okay, what?
No, you don't need music, I'll
No,
just
no,
cut it in half. And I say, well, everybody wants to feel it now. Before our show, just cut it. Feel free to damage it. You can see if I just kept going out and out and out, I don't think we would end up at about 18-inch skin. And you see it's not straight, it's not gold. So
After you use the metal rib, do you then use a different rib or just your hands to get away that metal rib looks?
I use the metal for the end.
Use metal thread.
And the better I'm throwing, the more I turn the whip towards the edge, so I got almost no surface area, and it's super fast.
And the one on the inside is this.
Yeah,
Okay, did you make it yourself?
Michael Franken's who taught me this, he had one of those, that's organizer, a friend I worked with, Joy, she organized all of his stuff, like self-dressed. He had an organizer, he had what he called long fingers, which was essentially a wooden finger that he put in. He had sticks with little discs, and he had all these different forms, which I can show anybody who's interested, but he threw completely dry from beginning to end, and everything. But it took him 45 minutes to grow a shape that I could pour in fine. So I amalgamated techniques like showing you. So anyway, it's not going anywhere good, but let's just then slow it. I stated that evenness is what makes the difference between being able to throw big and not being able to throw big. You get that bottom corner right, all the skills to do it, throwing well, and especially porcelain. It's like this spot right here where this joint's to be. So if you can get that sharp corner, you can make pottery taller, and none of the limits that are on most potters prevail. I know I met a potter in LA, she was from Germany, and she said to be a potter you had to have a license, and they had to pass a test. If they weren't, they could be a ceramic artist, but you could never make more than 5 of one thing. I don't know if urban myth or anyway. So she said to pass the test, you had to be able to throw. It's true?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to be able to throw a pair of 18-inch cylinders that matched. They had, I didn't know 2 Americans who could do it at the time. Just when I tried to hire people to do production pottery in my studio, I said, I'll pay you $25 an hour, and this was when $25 an hour was money. If you could throw me a 9-inch cylinder, 18-inch cylinder, I started out. I reduced down to 9 after a while because they said, is that 18 inches? And I'm like, no, that's 6. So I went down to 9 and they said, is that 9? And I said, if you're measuring anything else against that, you're totally deluded. It's not 9 inches. But that's what I couldn't teach people. Even professionals who've been doing it whole lifetimes, they don't know how to make the shot body corner. The body corner is the key to it. The overhang creates the bottom corner, and just basic principles. And in porcelain, I usually say to people with porcelain, it's actually easier to throw porcelain than anything else. You just have to be perfect. By that I mean, you just have to know your technique. You have to go straight for your shape, and you have to finish it quickly. And it's easy. It's so soft. It's so responsive. It's beautiful material. And any questions? I can take questions.
Yeah.
But there's going to be questions in the round table, right?
There will, but why don't we do like 10 minutes of questions here while you're...
I just was wondering,
Will.
how to make that whole
So-
thing.
No, it's entirely Will. Actually, I got the influence. These guys, Leon, Marquez, who worked with Svetita, friends with Clayton Omemiya, who's sort of culturally traditional Japanese potter. And I watched this guy for years. I thought I was, after throwing in the factories, you learn that the principle of good throwing is concentric circles. When you look at a pot on the wheel, like when I look at Shelby's stuff, sorry, I haven't seen enough of your stuff, I'm not insulting Dave, but you see concentric circles, and you see potter who's not that good, you see spirals. So you make the wheel go fast, your hands go slow, and your pottery comes out symmetrical, Western, and in traditional Apollo, it's Apollonian instead of Dionysian. It's nice and symmetrical, and I learned more and more of that. But Clayton could throw work and make work. I take Setsuga can too. I look at this stuff, and like the mystery of all work that emerged from the Zen tradition of the 1400s in Japan, it's got this mysterious embrace of transients in it. And I didn't know how it's done. And American potters will like push their pot off center to try and make it look that way, and it looks like they pushed their pot. So I watched Clayton for about 20 years and know what the hell he was doing. And then, so one day I invited him over, and he sat at a wheel next to me, and I was throwing next to him. And I had to slow my wheel down, make my hands go faster. And it created a terrible spiral. And then I started again and made another spiral, and at that 3 spiral, I had this beautiful bastard. So there's a piece that's not quite symmetrical, and then he picks it up, and I thought, why do the pieces always look so alive today? Most of the potters I've known and teachers, they contrive that authenticity. He picks it up and looks at it, and he's distorting it while he's looking at it. He doesn't do it on purpose. He just doesn't care. And he looks at it, it's a bit heavy here, and he cuts off a bit, and then puts it down, and then trims it later, and every time he picks it up, it gets more and more alive. And the handling, the touching, he cleans the inside, and the pieces come alive. And when I went out to the vault at the museum and looked at the works there, I suddenly understood that all these pieces were used, they're all functional work, used first by the potter who touched. The hand felt it, not like the rest of us. As I walked out, I looked at all the American master potters, all of these profiles sitting on pedestals, dead, cut off. And I started to understand how it was done. So I started touching the pieces. In this case, what I did is I throw something much like just a cylinder like this. I have been closing up. Then I start to normally paddle or beat the clay in, but I didn't. I got my big ribs. I started pulling here and my hand on the inside, pulling this way, in the kind of way that Clayton used clay to run. I just started pulling it to the side, and I did the same the other side, the other way. I pulled and pulled and pulled, and then, believe it or not, I just split the neck in half, joined it, and that is that. So it was thrown all below front in one piece, but the metaphor for it, I don't care about that, but just the technique. Metaphor of the Native American hymns, too. And then marriage pictures, another thing, you guys have seen them. That's so beautiful, so dysfunctional. As has been commented on me by wiser people than myself. It's a little bit of the perspective on marriage and the idea of union. That here you have this vessel that's just symmetrical, it's perfect, and it doesn't work. Before that, it's just going to spill everywhere. But I love the metaphor, I think it's incredibly beautiful. And so I thought I'd turn it more into your form, because I like big travel port. And so I thought of it as a marriage you wrote. Yes. And I really learned a lot of the way of moving this clay like this during claying down, fully rolled from to the last. And then the metal disc throwing, I amalgamated it into what clay does, but instead of pulling up, I pulled sideways. So you can actually move the clay from here to here. And you just drag it, and it looks beautifully, so it elevates it. Any other questions? Or?
How about the tip was more?
Personal question, or?
What about it?
Well, it starts out, okay, here's the divide, and it's suggesting this thing is a little too massive. And I just felt like it needed a sense of continuity of two vessels. Okay, I'm not going to be so shy, but it really felt, I thought, okay, a lot of my work through my career has been about multiplicity and one becoming two, two becoming one. And here's this moment, like in the middle of, meiosis, when cells split, and we become two. The information goes into two halves, both a whole and complete in themselves. And I thought I'd make a metaphor of that moment in between. I know it looks like a butt. That was my metaphor, and I stuck with it. But I do think it's interesting because you could think it was two vessels were joined. And I've done some that are extremely pulled apart, some that are less pulled apart, some that are fully unified. Most of the time when I'm designing art, I don't know what I'm doing. And usually about 5 years later, it's incredibly obvious, just as the bike became incredibly obvious when somebody walked in. So, there were other moments, testicles and that stuff, but it really was for me like exploring the moment between 1 and 2 minutes, and how complete the information needs to be in each app, including interestingly, I had this problem with my pieces get bigger and bigger. I love the vessel, but they get up to a certain size. I made some that are like 1,000 pounds, 8 feet high, and they fill up with water, and I'm like going up to antithetical. So I actually made an orifice there. Drains, but you can't see it. Anything else?
So that can I say something about your piece, that particular piece?
Sure.
Your gallery came in here and we just so stunned about this particular.
Cherokee.
Yes,
Piece nice.
we really loved it.
Color is great.
Yes, thank you so much and congratulations. All these years of been looking at your works and abroad and enjoy all through. But this came to this particular part of your life. And yesterday we had celebrated our dear friend's wedding. And that was marriage is the writing.
Yeah.
It shows that female, male live in peace and together enjoy the life all the day, every day. And it's totally that poem that you put into the piece is so stunning. That's what I felt when I saw it.
Oh, man.
So, congratulations.
Listen to her, don't listen to me.
I was really emotionally moved that piece. Yes, yes.
Thank you.
And I'm so glad that State Foundation inspired this.
Could you just speak a little bit to your glazing process on that too? So like,
On me, a lot.
So, and the thing that drew me to pottery in the beginning was 12th century Chinese pottery, Song Dynasty pottery, which is the classical celadon. It was the first time that's, as I understand it, that, again, I say things like I'm an expert, but I'm not a person born on this. Stoneware was created, temperatures got high enough in the kiln to turn the clay to glass. And at that point, ash that was accumulating on the bodies made a thin green glaze, which is all that Clayton does for his wood fire, 100 hours of ash accumulating, making green glaze. But celadon was also the product which Chinese perfected to look like jade. So celadon was one of the root glazes of the Song Dynasty, and beyond that there were subtle variations, which was their churny glaze, which is a pale blue glaze, colored in them as wood ash. So I spent a few years after I got to LA studying them and reading about them and trying to figure out how to make them. That's how I made a formulation of wood ash, and I created a number of things that looked a lot like Song Dynasty celadons, churnies, and copper reds. And I worked with them a lot of years. And then when I got here and I went down into the lava flow, actually I stopped making clay for about 2 years because I was just humiliated by everything I lost. But the way the earth moved and cracked, and the spontaneity and the revelation of nature that was in the lava trees. You guys ever seen the lava trees? Yeah. You know the story behind them? So I'll tell anybody who doesn't. These forests were there, and this ranger told me that lava flow 30 feet deep came rushing through. It burned the trees, but it dropped very quickly and cooled around the trees. So there's these huge columns in this area, and they're incredible sculptures where they break up into the see inside. And the nature of the crackling material was just entirely inspiring to me. So I looked at the foundation of Japanese Shino glazes. And so I started working with Shinos, and I modified the Shino glaze on top of the black glaze to try and get that to stay stable. At first they bubbled and listed in rubber tins. There's an old saying in Japanese that I read that said, never put Shino on top of anything else, it's always Shino flipped down. I found a way that I could make the Shino to stabilize on top of that black glaze. And after that, I began to look at all of the Japanese glazes, and their formulations looked a lot like Chinese glaze formulations. Right. And then I began to realize that, again, unsubstantiated theory, don't quote me, is not a fact, but the glazes that the Chinese created in some dynasty moved up there in Korea, and there's a book over there on an incredibly beautiful Korean record. And there's a subtle difference in the glazes there than the clays, because the clays are different. There, it jumped over to the signature, I think Hideyoshi, the emperor of Japan, as I understand it, saying since they couldn't be made work as subtle as the Koreans spells to the tea ceremony, they kidnapped the village of potters and brought them up, and they were the founders of a lot of Japanese studios. So I think the formulations are the same basis, but they kind of screwed them up. But the Zen tea masters embraced the accidents for their beauty, and so we have a new tradition of ceramics out of Japan that began to realize the formulations are close, that we make them work together. So I started working with Japanese glazes called the Chinese glazes. So that's what you got here is essentially layered glazes, but Japanese glazes called the Chinese glazes with various arcane techniques to get people stabilized and really included there are some pigments. They have a technical approach? Yeah.
How many glaze factories did it?
Every 5.
Yeah.
When I started using this technique to get this much, I actually, Jake has the first piece I did, and it took 15 firings. I fired it for a year to get all those layers on one that Jake has. This one I fired once.
Oh, what?
I had to learn how to get the laser. At first the laser would fall off. And the odd thing is now, I learned to get them all to stick. And then my friend Jewel came into my studio now. We work together. She's glazing, directly with glazing at the same time. And she could do a ballerina, so they could be layered. If you said it better than I did. She was saying you kind of like have to be able to see through time, what she said. Like you have to be able to imagine what's going to happen, what's going to become transparent, what's going to stay opaque, it's going to crawl and pull apart, it's going to reveal what thickness will change the color and what thickness won't. So you can use a clear like a varnish, or like build it up enough it has some opacity to become cloudy material applied in another way. So, did I paraphrase you adequately? Okay.
Sort of.
Anyone else? Okay, well, I thank you all for taking the time. When I got to this island 30 years ago, I said to go and get over to the first people I met who were really friendly, also had an actual art gallery that showed real art and made real art, and it was like an inspiration to stay here. Sort of inspired me to do the same thing. So I work at the cultural center, my gallery and all that. A lot of it goes thanks to these guys.